can comedy go too far? And if it can go too far, what is too far? Where is that line of too far? And who exactly draws that line? These are some of our very pressing questions that we are currently facing in Trinidad and Tobago as we see a comedy sketch that was released, and the reactions to it have been, well, intense, at least from some sectors of society. Some people are finding that this has been one step too far, and it takes jabs and pokes into old wounds and reopens old wounds that have been festering for many years, and it doesn't go well for the unity of our twin island republic. So we're going to watch this video now and see if we can see just what about it is offensive, where in it is offensive, how is it offensive, why is it offensive, and go through all of those other questions. So let's take a look at this.
Right, I want to bad talk Tobago for a little bit. What's the deal with Tobago? Like, when we gonna stop, like, pretending they're important? I know you're thinking, oh gosh, but listen, I come in here and I say good night Trinidad, and nobody bat an eye. Nobody say, excuse, what about our sister Isle? Nobody say that. If you think about our country's name too.
First off, I'm not going to lie to you, I have some pressure in my mind to make sure that I don't find what the man is saying is funny. Because you know that there are some people who find this offensive, so I'm having in the back of my mind that this shouldn't be funny to you. But to be honest, it isn't yet funny.
Trinidad and Tobago, if you just think about it, it's embedded with us. Tobago, not important. And I know you're probably thinking, hey Kyle, that's harsh when you're saying that for. But if somebody come up to you and say, you have a Tobago face, will you be offended? Yeah, they are.
You know, when you think about it, would you be offended? To me, that's the question in that. Like, okay, the unsaid suggestion there is that Tobagonians are ugly, or Tobago itself produces ugly people. Okay, that's one stereotype, that's one person's belief, and you can find that very offensive. But firstly, do you agree with it? Do you, if someone walks up to you and say, hey, you have a Tobago face, boy, would you find that offensive? And if you would find that offensive, isn't it more important to ask, why do you find that offensive? Why do you find such a thing to be a believable stereotype, instead of wondering why a comedian is attempting to make a joke out of it? Maybe the comedian is attempting to make a joke out of it because it's something that is at least partially believed in our society.
They hate us, Tobagonians. I don't know why. But
It's kind of funny too for him to just go through insulting Tobago and then say the Tobagonians hate us and he doesn't know why.
I walk up into Cheese's Chicken in Tobago and I say, hello, may I have some napkins? You're from Trinidad. I don't know how Tobago is. So I learned to read at a young age, so it's hard to get the accent if you're illiterate. Everybody relax. Comedy. So I think they feel
He said
like,
it's comedy.
we better than them. Yeah, your beach is nice. We have one secondary school. Like, bro, everybody in Tobago is passing their first choice.
That was kind of funny, must admit.
Like, matter of fact, thinking about their national bird, a cockrico. How low your self-esteem have to be to walk up to a Down syndrome pigeon and be like, that's it, that's the one, write it down. What? Don't make me sound better, make me sound better. I think it would.
Alright. So,
I guess everybody
in the first place, if someone is using the word Down syndrome in a comedy piece, you have to understand that they aren't trying exactly to tread on eggshells when they're speaking. He made a joke about Down syndrome. Oh gosh, it's meant to be offensive. So that's for the first part. The intention is to do offensive comedy. So offensive comedy isn't everyone's cup of tea. Offensive comedy sometimes isn't my cup of tea. And the idea is that offensive comedy is kind of meant to insult. So if some of it is insulting, well, that's kind of the intention. That's not saying much to say it's insulting. In quick succession, though, we saw both the Tobago House of Assembly leader, the Chief Secretary, one Ansel K. Dennis, and our Minister of Education, Dr. Nian Gadsby Dali. Both of them quickly came out, not too far apart from each other, both strongly condemning the video, and the artist himself, the Tobago Chief Secretary, saying this asinine and highly offensive charade is before us at a time when this country is on the cusp of redefining the relationship between the islands. It is not only insensitive and foolish, but reflective of the similar or worst views held by many across the waters. Commentary of this nature must be strongly and respectfully condemned, and I call on all right-thinking Trinidadians to join me in doing so. First off, Mr. Dennis, I'd like to say, to come to the defense of the comedian a bit, it's not exactly commentary, it's meant to be comedy. Comedy and commentary aren't the same thing, and they shouldn't be easily exchanged and interchanged with each other. I'm sure if you ask the comedian for his legitimate commentary on Tobago and what he thinks about the people of Tobago, you'd get a different answer than if you ask him to do a comedy sketch on the island. If anything, during this period, the relationship and mutual respect between the people of the two islands must improve, and this requires the young especially to be responsible and deliberate about facilitating such. No all skin teeth a laugh, joke for you is death for crapo, no sit pon river stone and bad talk river, laugh and cry does live in the same house, ratatong does sell him... Oh. Ratatong does sell a head, crapo smoke your pipe, carry a torigi dog. Okay, so the chief secretary there had to make sure that we knew he was a credentialed local boy, and he was filled with his local parlance, and he laced the end of his comment there with some. And Dr. Nian Dali, our education minister, her comment was, I saw a video yesterday purported to be a joke about Tobago. I honestly didn't get it. What I got was annoyed and ashamed. Maybe I don't have the right sense of humor, but with all that's going on in my country, all the challenges we face, it was honestly the last thing I needed to see. Hashtag funny not funny. Hashtag insult isn't humor. Well, that last hashtag is just not true. Like, okay, you could find it not humorous, as she said. You could find it not funny, and that may not be your thing. But to say insult is not humor is actually untrue, because humor for a very long time, a large part of the entire comedy scope, a large part of the comedy genre has been insulting comedy. Something about insulting comedy is funny to us. Maybe it's the fact that there's some truth to it, and when you poke at that truth, maybe when someone can be able to recognize something that they maybe don't want to recognize in themselves, or maybe they didn't recognize before in themselves, that this brings a kind of shadow of a truth to it, and that's what makes you laugh, the relatability of it. If a piece of comedy isn't relatable, generally it makes no one laugh. So even when something is mean and insulting, the relatability of it generally is what makes someone laugh. Granted, I didn't find that this piece was particularly funny, and that may just be a matter of the comedian missing. I wouldn't doubt that there may have been some other comedian that can take the same set and, because of a different style of delivery, deliver it, and it would have been funnier and probably less offensive feeling. Maybe it was the lack of humor in it and the fact that it didn't have you laughing throughout, that you took time and you listened to some of the words and you found offense in it. But offense is really up to the listener to find. If you find offense in something, that's because you choose to find offense in something. The person may have said something that may be considered offensive to some, but the offense is an emotion you feel. Offense is what you feel. Offense is your choice. So, for example, when the chief secretary commented and said, this asinine and highly offensive charade, maybe the comedian can take that statement and that phrase and find that offensive. The chief secretary of an island is telling him that his comedy, his art is asinine, and I'm pretty sure that can be considered offensive to some people. Just as beauty is in the eye of the beholder, offense is in the ears of the hearer. So if you're offended, really and truly, that's kind of a personal problem. But that's not to pretend that we cannot understand what is offensive about it, because there is some history between Trinidad and Tobago, and some of the history has some of those offensive stereotypes in it, and because the history has some of those those offensive stereotypes in it, it could bear a particular zing and a particular sting to it. Someone was drawing reference to it as if it were some white person, some Caucasian person making an insensitive joke about black people. And when you put it in that angle, many people would get it very literally, very quickly. There's this concept that is gaining more ground now, where we're hearing many people speaking about speaking truth to power. And especially when they speak about comedians, they suggest and they hope that a comedian always attacks up the power scale. So if a comedian is of a certain amount of fame, you attack someone that's up from you. You don't hit down, you don't fight down, you don't punch down. It seems unfair. And you could get a bit of that feeling in this when you consider that a Trinidadian comedian is speaking in a condescending manner about Tobago. And the things he speaks about, where he speaks about ugliness, and if we're being honest, one of the reasons that there's this offense is Trinidad has more of a mixing melting pot. The races in Trinidad are more mixed. The races in Tobago are more predominantly and purely of an Afrocentric descent. And if we're being honest and we're speaking about ugliness and it's relating to a more Afrocentric descent, you could understand why there would be a lot of offense in that. And you could understand why there would be some history and some colonialism and social studies even wrapped up in some of these insults. But I'd like to note that personally, I don't think that the comedian's intention was to get so deep cutting in this. I don't think he was analyzing the history of colonialism and cutting at wounds that were there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It was meant as a joke, but that's one of the entire ideas behind comedy. In olden times, it was said that the court jester, the comedian, was a testament of how free a specific society or a specific country was. If the court jester wasn't allowed to joke about certain topics, it was a symptom of how oppressive this regime is. And in that light, we could see the usefulness of comedy. In another side, beside entertainment, beside just being used for someone's kicks and enjoyment, comedy can offer a glimpse into honesty that polite society may not allow other people to speak. If you don't like the topics that a comedian speaks about and you find what they're saying is too offensive for your society, then maybe what you should be doing isn't necessarily questioning the comedian, but you should be questioning your society in terms of why are they creating a situation where this thing that you find offensive is what they find funny or what is being sold as funny. And some of this entire furor was just that. That's how society was meant to work. Society was meant to work in a sense by social pressures. And this is kind of what this comedian is feeling now. So he made this skit, he made this sketch, and he's feeling the social pressure of it because some people find it offensive, and maybe he went out of the bounds of our society and some of the members of our society are trying to herd them back in. That's part of the function of society. That's what we do. We're attempting to allow people to know where is too far, where is good enough, where the bounds are for being polite and being a normal member of this society. But one of the problems we're facing in modern times, in times with social media, is that this manner of social correction is now on steroids. So while it may have been 10 years ago, he made this piece and someone close to him tells him, well, maybe that's a bit offensive, and because the jokes didn't hit, you'd have to kind of recalibrate your delivery, and maybe 2 weeks down the road he does it over and it hits, and maybe they ask him over in Tobago and they laugh at themselves, because most mature people are capable of laughing at themselves, even at your insecurities. It's part of what many mature people go to comedy shows for. So maybe if this was 10 years ago, that would have been how we would have treated with this. But because this now is in the social media age, the social correction is on steroids. So where it may have been 5 people just giving a soft correction, now it's 500 people, and each one is attempting to outdo each other because social media is performative. When I comment about how offensive this piece of art is, when I comment about how offensive this bit of comedy is, I must let everyone know that I am truly offended by this. And if someone is going to share what I said, they have to one up on me. They can't just repeat the same level of offense I am. If I was very offended, someone has to be very, very offended. And if someone else was very, very offended, the third person now has to be thrice offended. It's a competition of offense. And this now is changing the entire structure of society where we were meant to follow each other's guidelines and to follow, yes, we were meant to look at other people's opinions. That's what a society is. No man is an island. So when I look at my neighbor and I see how my neighbor reacts to how I behave, and I look at my family and I see how my family reacts to how I behave, this is a guide on my behavior. It allows me to be a working and functional member in our society. That's why these traits have always been society specific. So in Trinidad, I would be acclimatized to the Trinidadian society and culture, and that would guide me into being a good Trini. And Tobago likewise. I don't think that the relationship between Trinidad and Tobago is even like the comedian tried to make it seem, where Trinidadians have this strong sense of superiority to Tobagonians. I'm not sure that perception is as widespread as some Tobagonians may think. Or by and large, I don't think that Tobagonians hate Trinidadians or are angered by our presence. Many Tobagonians were former Trinidadians, and many Trinidadians were former Tobagonians. In fact, the Prime Minister of our twin island republic is a Tobagonian, and he's currently living in Trinidad, married to a Trinidadian. It's a far stretch to me to see that a comedic joke, whether the comedy hit or not, would be such a kind of thing that could create true division between our two islands. I'd like to believe that that isn't so, and that maybe some people found it funny, and the people who didn't find it funny, well, they just didn't look at it either. And that's the beauty about online and online pieces. If you don't like something, you could just not look at it. But tell me, what do you think? Do you think that this bit of comedy was just too offensive, and maybe we should try to get this off the internet and make sure, like Barbados is doing over there, make sure that such art isn't produced again? Or maybe we allow the comedians to do as the comedians do, and if you do not like their art, then you do not look at it. But it is what it is. Tell me, what do you think? Don't forget to like the video if you haven't liked it yet. Drop a comment to tell me what you think, and share the content also. Let's see if we can have other people inside of this discussion and pull the structure of the discussions into what we may consider more constructive. If you're not subscribed yet, well, subscribe now. You can click the notification bell also, and click for all notifications so you know just when the next video is released. And the next one is going to be released tomorrow at 10 a.m. and I'll see you there.